critics, welcome back to The Alley, the show that actually takes place in Silent Hill. We have fog, we have a terrible monster host, and a main character full of trauma and regret, much like you will be after you watch this show.
Sad and unhappy all at the same time.
It should be no surprise that the Silent Hill series is near and dear to my blackened heart. It's filled with doom and dark lore, much like my own hometown, which is probably why it'll keep popping up throughout this episode, like Pyramid Head does in his own series. But hey, James had it coming. And maybe so do I. As someone who is very fond of the darkness within us all, I have followed the series a fair amount. I've played a few games, watched a movie or two, and joined in several online communities dedicated to the subject. I've seen a few questions that have popped up time and again and that I myself have asked. Since hell is better with friends, I decided to dig into the lore and find an answer that is probably a little satisfying. And as usual, my overthinking and analysis prowess has done just that. One in particular that'll probably explain a few things or make you think I deserve to take my ridiculous ranting back into the void from whence I came. Hopefully all of the above. So, like a ghost that will inevitably monologue to explain its backstory, let's dig into a little lore so that we're all on the same page of this Diary of a Madman. Silent Hill is a horror survival franchise that debuted back in 1999 with their first self-titled game. Often taking survival horror and psychological discomfort to new levels, we explore the cursed town of Silent Hill and its many layers. The first few installments were created by the legendary Team Silent, and the rest were made by other developers with frequent contributions and even full-on participation of the original members, which admittedly has created some divide within the fandoms, similar to how Silent Hill will make fun little barriers within itself in creative ways. I'm that guy that reminds you, hey, we're all in this spiraling pit of despair together. Nobody's darkness should be discrediting anyone else's. All pain powers the machine. Torture devices aren't picky, and I think the most annoying monsters are the ones that follow you around all day and just remind you that they're better than you. This isn't high school, you creepy cavern cretins. I would rather get sucker punched by one of those leg monsters for the 43rd time today, or have one of those nurses do terrible things to me in the dark. And judging from the Google results I found while gathering that picture, many of you want one or two of those nurses to do horrible things to you in the dark. See, we are more alike than you know. Objects in the broken mirror are closer than they appear. There's rich insanity behind the town of Silent Hill, Maine. Oh, that's right. It's in Maine, which means Stephen King's mansion is very likely an extension of this ghoulish goth fest that is Silent Hill. Makes perfect sense, right? Creepy strokes for creepy folks. That's why I have a place in the void as well. And of course it's in America, because that's also a place that gets more twisted and depressing the further down you go. Silent Hill has origins as a sacred place for Native Americans, a tourist locale, and a fun house for a delightful group of occultist fanatics known as the Order. And all three will play a part in this explanation. The natives called it the place of silent spirits, and when the colonizers showed up and, well, did what colonizers do in America, they kicked off some of the fun curses that probably led all the way up to the madness that is today. And this gave those slap-happy, soul-sucking cultists plenty of energy to slurp up as they did their culty cantankery, including the torture of Alessa Gillespie, the daughter of Dahlia Gillespie, in order to harvest her psychic energy and utilize it to summon their god. These events had varying levels of success, and from what I gather, had unexpected results that may have actually surpassed their initial goals. Because, quite simply, Silent Hill is alive. But not in the fun way like Jello. More like the nightmare-fueled, all-consuming, ever-expanding way that, you know what? It is pretty much exactly like Jello. You remember that mass unaliving of Native Americans and that god summoning stuff? Well, that stuff has been known to make cursed hollow ground. The more darkness chunks of land consume, the more powerful it gets until it is what some cultures call sentient land. Not that it becomes more human as the name may imply, but that it obtains and possesses its own consciousness, spirit, and agency. Similarly reflected by certain classical creatures such as the Wendigo. The Wendigo has folktales directly relating to the gluttonous expansion of colonizers into the Native Americans' land and desecration of their sacred areas. It was seen as cannibalistic for humans to expand ruthlessly into the land of others, consuming them and ejecting them, all while declaring it was the natural way of things as they move into their lands with the cost of fellow humans. Following the arrival of the colonizers in approximately 1607 and the ensuing witch trials of Salem, Massachusetts in 1692, Silent Hill was abandoned as the spread of a strange epidemic quickly went across it. This unexplained illness could be the cursed land's first act of revenge, and it will come back around later, much like the measles have today. It's funny how negligence and negative intentions create a perfect breeding ground for horrible disasters. The Gillespie Coal and Iron Company establishes the Devil's Pit Mine in 1816. You remember the Gillespie family. The Devil's Pit includes a deep, dark cavern known as the Cave of Tears, home to a species called the Weeping Bat, named because of a secretion that emits from their eyes. The natives thought the animals were weeping because they were forced to stay in such a deep, dark prison. Dayu's Tusk Cavern was what it was originally called, named by the Chinese immigrant miners who found the giant stalagmite and said it reminded them of a tusk of Dayu itself. Dayu translates to Earth Prison and was considered to be the land of the dead itself in Chinese mythology. In real life, actually. This location was explored in greater detail in the game Silent Hill Downpour, which coincidentally is piloted by my favorite protagonist, Murphy Pendleton. Downpour is often overlooked because it was developed by the Western team, but also praised for its open-world interpretation of the Silent Hill town. I strongly recommend you play this title because Murphy is greater than James. No question. Bro is even willing to throw hands with these monsters. 90% of the protagonists need at least a melee weapon. March 15th, 1820, Maine secedes from Massachusetts, becoming its own state, which is a real-life event and why the Salem witch trials were so important earlier. Spooky events matter. In 1810, a civil war breaks out. That horrible prison was created. A new disease spreads across the land, prompting them to build the Brookhaven Hospital, and the town officially becomes Silent Hill. So 1810 was a big year for Spookyville. 1850 bore the Wiltsey coal mine. In 1853, Shepherd's Glen, the Shelbyville to our somber Springfield, is formed by the four major families: Holloway, Bartlett, Shepherd, and Fitch. You may remember them as the four horsemen who started sacrificing family members to appease their god. They must continue this appeasement every 50 years. Around 1890, people began mysteriously disappearing. In the early 1900s, the prison shuts down and tourism begins. Perfect time, right? In 1903, it's blood sacrifice time again. In 1918, the tourist ship Little Baroness goes missing from Toluca Lake. You heard correctly. The whole boat. And all the people on it. More boat mysteries spring up around 1939, diminishing the tourism. Almost like cursed land full of tragedy isn't good for commercial purposes. 1953 hits and it's Kill Your Kids at Work Day for the Founders Club cause they got a hungry god. And finally, the events of the games begins with origins in the 70s, including Travis, with Silent Hill 1 happening in the 80s with Harry and Heather, and with Silent Hill 2 happening in the 90s with James. I know, not everyone signed up for the history of murder and mystery, but these were important events for us to gloss over, and trust me, I only barely tapped on the bloodstained tapestry. Each event feeds Silent Hill, and my big beautiful theory. Okay, enough pontificating, and let's dig into the crux of this on page 4 of the script. I've already declared that Silent Hill is a living house of horrors, like that hotel from The Shining. When you mix together blood, sugar, fornication, and magic, like that Red Hot Chili Peppers album, you get something very much alive. But how? Why? So we briefly discussed the cult ran by Dahlia Gillespie and the 4 founders feeding their god. But the summoning of that said god kind of failed when Travis stopped it, and when Harry stopped it again, and once more when they failed to sacrifice Heather, who actually had a bit of Alessa Gillespie in her, like some kind of weird Dragon Ball Z fusion. But all that sacrifice and cult juices had to go somewhere, right? But that was just the beginning. Silent Hill is kind of split into layers, like a lasagna of evil. The regular world is full of tourists, the fog world, where they slip in and out like some kind of swingers party of pain, and the other world, which is mostly reserved for main characters. Between the trauma of the tourists that keep randomly going missing and the even deeper disturbed main characters that continue to be called back to this place, there's plenty of yummy psychological pain for this place to eat up. Like that ex you had that would relish in pointless fighting. It may even be an extension of their god herself, who made other fun deities to help her with their wicked ways. Fun powers to note is that this god would have the ability to travel between numerous planes of existence, to be able to warp anywhere in this dimension, and had things gone their way, they'd have the ability to rewrite reality itself. Even splintered, in this living Silent Hill form, it was able to take the protagonist out of their own reality and perhaps out of their own dimension even, and place them somewhere upon its fun layers. From the fog world that separates them from other mortals and puts them in isolation, to the even deeper other world where all of that reality can be distorted and transformed. This is found in all of the games, but particularly expressed in certain events that Murphy himself goes through in Downpour. Examples of this include endless stairwells, morphed versions of people and creatures from other realities such as the Wheelman, and that fun ball of death that chases him through the other world that I have lovingly named the Nothing. It's important to note, though, that even though the Nothing can appear and disappear at will, it must still follow certain rules, like being slowed down by physical objects as it chases Murphy through the halls. These are examples of those powers that I listed that are still interrupted by individuals with strong will and determination. An unfinished god still having to overcome the souls of its victims instead of being able to claim them outright as a being with omniscience would be able to. So this incomplete deity chooses to act through emissaries it creates by splitting them off the psyche of some of the stronger ones that seem to enter this place. For example, several characters have big bad wolf versions of themselves that are able to put the will of this god into practice. One of them being James Sunderland himself with the red pyramid thing, aka Pyramid Head. A quick fun lore bit that not a lot of people seem to know is there's an older version of this creature known as the White Hunter. He even has a comic you can look up to watch him impale an angel. The red pyramid thing begins as merely a reflection of James's remorse until it gains enough power to exist on its own, even appearing to other characters in the series, which was a big complaint I often heard. Well, if Pyramid Head is just James, why is James showing up in other games? That's because, after a certain point, it wasn't just James. It's important to note that not every character gets one of these entities, which I have fondly named anchors because they keep that god tied to this world and work like gross fingers digging into each fresh pie. Another example is Travis and the Butcher, clearly a representation of his turmoil until it becomes real enough to take his life. And the third and most obvious anchor that I've seen is Murphy's Boogeyman, who also appears to Anne, another character in Downpour. She even encounters this creature as a shadow over Murphy himself during her battle with him. Each one has a weapon of choice and varying degree of clothing. Put a shirt on, Triangle Jerk. These anchors come to fruition during very formative years of Silent Hill's life, each one increasing the sentient land's abilities. But these incomplete demigods are not even able to keep their victims under the thumb of their mistress god. Although every Silent Hill game boasts multiple endings with levels of ambiguity based on the decisions you make as the captain of your main character's vessel. This is mostly just for narrative purposes in a few of these occurrences. Some of these characters have canon endings, though, where they actually escape from Silent Hill, including Travis and Murphy. We see Travis in other games interacting with characters after his adventure in the Fogscape. He's the one who drops Alex Shepard off in Homecoming. Murphy can escape based on some of your decisions throughout the game, but the short graphic novel called Anne's Story runs alongside Downpour and includes many events from the game, such as Murphy leaving at the end. Anne's Story is considered canon, so the events that occur within it must be canon as well. I want to note that being the third anchor created, I have a feeling that the Boogeyman is one of the stronger anchor characters. Mostly because he is a manifestation of two characters. Even Murphy sees him as an amalgamation of the revenge that consumed him and that which he sought to take revenge upon, while Anne views him as the manifestation of the revenge that she plans to enact upon Murphy for what she believes he did to her father, an alleged crime that he is later exonerated of. And this gives him two sources of energy from which he is created. One could argue that Valtiel is also an anchor character, since we see him being able to traverse from the otherworld to the fog world, such as he does when he moves an incapacitated Heather from one to the next. But there is evidence that it was created by the god itself, and it's not exactly clear whether it is trying to assist Heather or the demon fetus within her. Heather, with all her powers, seemed to be on a completely different level than the rest of the main characters, though, mostly because of her direct connection to the deity. The multiple endings aspect also seems to be a circumstantial expression of that god's ability to rewrite reality to fit its will, likely to cause further trauma to feed off of and keep their hostage in captivity longer until they're able to break free to their canon ending. Especially if the loop theory that seems to keep James trapped in his own personal hell ends up being true. Many people point to events and evidence given in the Silent Hill 2 remake that James has been kept there for a lot longer than even he understands. The deity being incomplete is likely what gives these characters the opportunity to break free entirely. Well, that and the human will being such an intense force. Whether the malevolent forces win every battle or not, it does seem to still be winning the war. It's still gaining power, and its reach is absolutely growing. Not just with its effect, but with its ability to reach out and find the people that it wants. Let's take a moment and think back to a couple examples. In Silent Hill 3, Heather is walking through a mall somewhere clearly not in Silent Hill, yet the entity reaches out and wraps its juicy tendrils around it and morphs it to its will. The mall transforms into the other world. It infiltrates capitalism, and it continues to do so until it brings her back right where it wants her. Henry Townsend doesn't like people and he stays to himself, living most of his life inside of his apartment. One day he wakes up and finds himself inexplicably locked inside of his apartment. Hence that well-known locked door picture. This persists for 5 days until he finds a hole in his bathroom that leads him to another dimension. The entity literally waits in a hole in his bathroom like a pervert. No personal boundaries, man. But besides showing that it's creepy on another voyeuristic level, it does show that it can literally reach anywhere. Not just in space, but in time as well. We are kind of shown examples of this in many ways. From being able to revert its physical form to tell stories, to the fact that when the adventure is over for many of them, it's as if no time has passed. For example, at the end of Downpour, it seems to go pretty much to the exact moment of that bus crash. And we can tell this because Anne gets a transmission via her walkie-talkie. And that wouldn't happen if time had gone by because, well, honestly, they wouldn't keep trying her radio. They would have announced her missing and either began a search party or just declared her dead. Even in the example of James, if he is kept there for the 2 decades that the picture puzzle implies, then he sure doesn't look like he's grown 2 decades worth of time, does he? Considering this, it does not at all seem beyond reason that Silent Hill could reach out to Japan in the 60s to grab hold of Hinako if it felt she was a strong enough beacon. And that has been a huge question / criticism that I have heard about the new game Silent Hill F. It's not even happening in Silent Hill anymore. To that, I say, oh, but my dear sweet critics, it is. Only Silent Hill is coming to you. Cause Heck's gonna give it to you. Fuck waiting for you to get it on your own. Heck's gonna deliver to you. So not only does it explain why reoccurring characters can echo throughout the series, but also why time and space are irrelevant factors when Silent Hill wants you. This franchise encapsulates mental health, how we perceive it, and how it can transform our lives in wonderfully terrible ways. Trauma can have such a consuming grip on us that we might not even realize how far down we've gone. And before you know it, we find ourselves as residents living there singing "Won't You Be My Neighbor" with all the monsters. They have such good writing and characters that we pretty much all have a protagonist driven by mental illness that we can relate to. From the guilt-ridden James to the revenge-driven Murphy, there's a trauma buddy for all of us. But this also shows us that no matter how far we fall down into despair, we all have the power to dig ourselves out of our shallow graves. Even though we all get lost in the fog sometimes, you can make it home. After you win the battle, heal the wounds, and forgive yourself, even you can one day wake up and say, there was a hole here. It's gone now. Critically yours, The Fox.